Alright guys, it's time for some more hobby nightmares. I hope you're strapped in. Let's jump into it, shall we? And get started with our first hobby nightmare of the day. If you like what I do, the subscribe button is down below. Please help the channel grow. It would be amazing if you did so. We are on our way to 20,000 subscribers, so push us towards that target if you can. Composite games are also down below. For any of your model needs that you need to buy, use the promo code Northern Exile to get yourself 5% off your order at checkout. And also, Grimdark Gaming is down below as well, to get you your modelling needs all painted up for when you put them on the tabletop. If you want anyone to give you a model really quick as a turnaround, use the promo code Northern Exile down below to get yourself 10% off of your quote from him. That is also down below to do some painting for you. Anyway, on to the hobby nightmares. Matthew says, "Hi North, Matthew here. I hope things are going well for you." Yeah, they're going all right, man. I can't complain. I mean, it's fine. Thank you again for reading my story earlier. No worries. It was different listening to someone read it and give their own thoughts on it. There were a few things I didn't explain very well. And when I talked to my brother about it, he said, "Well, you did talk more about the game and the rules instead of the people playing the game. There's also this theory called the author is dead." And he went over the idea with me, and I thought it was really interesting and gave me a new perspective on writing and listening to horror stories. You can probably explain it better than me, but the whole idea is that once an author puts out their writing, the reader is the one who interprets it. As a teacher, what advice would you give to help with this theory? Would you suggest letting your writing sit for a day or two and then come back to it? And I'll get on to the hobby nightmare in just a bit once you've explained. Okay, yeah, so the writer is dead. You've explained it really well. Essentially, when you write something down, your ownership of it is in your own head, no problem, but you don't get to decide how other people interpret it, do you know what I mean? They interpret it in their own way, which is fine, and they can read into it what they like. My problem with the author is dead is that when the author then explains what they mean, right? I've had people say to me about things that I've written, and I've seen people go up to authors and also say this to them too, is that if you read something into my writing and then I tell you that isn't there, or maybe it's an interesting thought, but that's not what I was going for, if you then respond to me and say, no, I think that's what you were going for, you're a moron. I wrote it. Are you insane? People did that to Tolkien so much. When they told him like the ring was an allegory for the atomic bomb. And no matter how many times he told people that wasn't the case, that's not what he was going for, people just told him, no, it was what you were going for. Yeah, that's what we mean by the author is dead as a toxic thing. That's not a good thing. But having your own opinion on somebody's work, that's fine. And the author is dead is a very, very, very cool thing, that they interpret your writing in such a way. Not really sure how it affects Hobby Nightmares, but I guess you mean that you weren't getting yourself across very well. And that's true. I think with the factors with the author is dead is you want to make sure that if somebody gets the wrong thing from your writing, that they're doing it honestly, and you can only make sure you're doing that by writing well. If you're writing well and getting your point across, then a very few people will not get what you're saying. Do you know what I mean? They will get what you meant, and you won't get any author is dead comments because, well, many of them anyway, because you were able to express what you're thinking, you know? So good writers very rarely get that. It's only the writers who really struggle to get their ideas across, as you guys do. You guys aren't professional writers, do you know what I mean? A few of you are, but most of you aren't. So we're not holding you to that standard, alright? So don't worry about it too much. Anyway. The blue paint I used on my Cadians is the Turbo Dork Turbo Shift Dabadi. Okay? I really like the Turbo Dork paints. Something about their colour shifting paint just makes me really happy. I think you've sent in one of your models here, haven't you? Yeah, there you go. Well, people can make their own suggestions. I think they look pretty cool. I like the camouflage on the top right. I think that looks really cool. Anyway, another kind of paint I'd like to share with everybody is something called liquid crystal. It's a little pricey and a very different kind of paint, but it's the same kind of stuff used in mood rings. It changes 6 to 12 different colours based on the temperature. I will attach a couple of images of my stealth suits which use this liquid crystal paint. I wanted to share with you a short hobby story that involves our mum. She has been supportive of our Warhammer hobby, but that wasn't always the case. Alright, I'm going to love this one. But that's the same paint at different temperatures, guys. I think that's pretty cool, especially for Tau battle suits and stealth suits. That's awesome. Like it. Anyway. The first Warhammer box we ever got was the Assault on Black Reach. My brother got the Space Marines, whilst I got the Orcs. If my memory is correct, it was our dad who bought the box from the gaming store for a Christmas or birthday present. We walked out of the game store excited to try out our new game, and we built the set at our dad's house. I don't believe our mum was completely surprised, but I think she was a little on the fence with us buying expensive toy soldiers. She was never negative towards the hobby, but there were a few remarks about how much money we started spending on Warhammer. That's normal. Completely normal. You know, completely normal. The prices... Listen, mate, and everybody out there, don't blame your parents for scoffing at the price of Warhammer. Blame Games Workshop at being greedy bastards. That's what you should be doing. Alright? Your parents' responsibility is to put food on your table. And if they're seeing a £35, £36 box of toy soldiers where you only get 10 toy soldiers in there, that's a fucking rip-off, no matter what hobby you're into. Okay? So, yeah. Blame the company, don't blame your parents. I know it's hard, but don't. One day, however, she came home, looked at our models, and said, "You know what? I don't think you guys have enough Warhammer." We both looked at her, wondering who this woman was and what she did to our mum, and she shrugged. "I just got back from my pedicure. The lady working on my nails was explaining that her son spends too much money on cigarettes and other things." And she clasped her hands together, looking at the ping pong table taken over by our figures. "I just think you guys need to get more Warhammer." Good. Brilliant. What a good woman. You know, she's realised there are much worse things for you to be into than Warhammer. You're learning arithmetic, you're learning social skills, you're learning leadership skills, you're learning battlefield tactics on a very macro level, right? You're learning all of these social skills you're going to need later on in life. It is the most healthy thing for a young man to get into, is Warhammer. If you've got a son, or even a daughter, who likes that kind of stuff, throw them in at the deep end, get them into the hobby. They will learn so many skills that will stand them in very good stead later on in life, I swear, right? Keep them safe in the hobby, you know? If there's any weirdos around, get them away, right? But aside from that, they're very, very, very rare. Aside from that, have fun with it. And get involved in it yourself. This mum here has seen the light. She's seen somebody else's kids who were smoking, who were hanging around the street corners, who were causing trouble, who were being little arseholes, right? And she's seen you guys playing with your Warhammer, and she goes, "You know what? Let's get you some more Warhammer." Yeah. From that day, she supported our Warhammer hobby. She asked us what we like to collect, the characters we paint, and even bought us shelves to display our figures. Dude, this woman's... There would be a lot of single dads in the chat thinking, "Is this woman available?" Right? Not me, obviously, but you know. As the years went by, she also noticed how creative and social the hobby was. I also told her that painting, as you said, Mr. North, is like meditation, and how much it has helped me during stressful times. Thank you for reading, Mr. North, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Dude, that's brilliant. That's fantastic. And your mum deserves a lot of credit there for... Anybody would balk. Don't blame your mum for balking at the prices. They're ridiculous. Alright? But she's done a good thing there in recognising that it's good for you and making sure that you're having fun in your own hobby. Brilliant stuff. Alright. Next one. Seth. And he says... Hello, North. First time caller, long time listener. No problem. It's fine to use my real name of Seth. A little background. I always think Seth, right? Especially parents who are around my age. They were all the kooky kids who were like goths when they were younger. You know what I mean? I'm going to call my son Seth. Okay, cool. Of course you are, love. Of course you are. Alright, get the fishnets off. Don't want them around me. Alright, go over there somewhere. Anyway. A little background. I started playing RPGs in the 1980s because I'm old. Around 1990 to 91, a friend got a copy of Rogue Trader, and not long after, I picked up a second edition starter box set. The last game I played with 40k was in 1998 or 99, and I was away from the hobby for almost 20 years before I got back into painting. I have been painting again for about 7 years, and still haven't played again. Attached is a recent project I did, where I dug up my old metal Azrael I have never painted and finally did it alongside a modern Azrael. Anyway, on to the story. Well, I can't carry on the story until I show this model. Kind of, whoa, wow, wow. That's brilliant. And do you know what I like about this? Is that it does show that size difference is silly. I'm just going to say. That is, look how small they used to be. It shows two things. One, your skill as a painter. Alright? That they're very similar. That you've managed to keep it very similar. And number two, what an upgrade the Primaris actually are. I know people have a go at the Primaris. I know people like are grumpy about it. But I do think it's the one model change that Games Workshop made that needed to happen. And it's been good for everybody who plays that army, right? Everybody who plays Space Marines, mostly, loves the Primaris Marines as models. They're easier to paint, they're easier to put together, and if you've got a few sets, they're quite good to convert as well, right? And they look cooler. They don't look like rip-off Darth Vaders anymore. They actually look really, really cool on their own 2 feet. They're very much the iconic Space Marine. When you see a Primaris Marine now, nobody looks at it and goes, that guy kind of looks like Darth Vader. Nobody does that. They go, Space Marine. That's a Space Marine. That's cool as shit. And it is cool as shit, because 40k is awesome. And it will always be awesome. Go suck a dick. Alright, cool. Leaving it on there, let's move on. Where was I? Anyway, on to the story. This was a 2nd edition game hella years ago, so forgive me if I get some rules details wrong. Even if I forget the exact number of dice or points, the outcome is what matters here. Okay, cool. Back then, I wasn't a very good player, and only ever won 1 or 2 games ever, so losing wasn't really a problem. Me too, mate. 3rd edition, Eldar, I was terrible, because I wasn't ready to use them, I was too young. But boy, did I love my Space Elves. Boy, did I love my Space Elves. I lost every game, but fuck me if I didn't do it looking good. I'm telling you now, my army was the shit. Looked really good. I was never competitive and just enjoyed showing off my paint jobs and rolling dice with friends. One friend I played with a lot we will call Roger, because that's his name, and a few years later, in a totally unrelated story, he screwed me over, so fuck him. Anyway, it was my Dark Angels versus his Orcs, and going into the last turn, I was behind on points, but things started going very well for me. I picked up both my primary and secondary objectives, and wiped some of his squads, and suddenly it was a tie. With every point I had picked up, Roger, who had beaten me in every game we'd ever played, was becoming more and more grumpy. No longer standing at the table joking around, he was now slumped back in his chair, only answering questions with a grunt, and would roll his dice all lackadaisical when he had to. Oh my god. Okay. I'm gonna freely admit something now. I once acted like this. This is North talking now. I once acted like this, right? It was in an apocalypse game where basically I'd had a pretty good win ratio over the last year at university, right, with my Grey Knights. I'd done pretty well. Won quite a lot of games. And I didn't realise I'd made a lot of enemies, because I'd always had good games and a good laugh, and people would always shake my hand and smile and have fun with me, right? And then we get to the apocalypse game, and literally the entire table of enemy players focuses on me, and all of my allies, who have also beaten over the year, refuse to help me. And I got really, really, really fucking salty. Like, I just sat there and went, you know what? You guys don't want me here, I'm just going to roll my fucking dice. And then, as soon as my guys are dead, I don't want to ruin the game by just picking up my models, you know what I mean? But as soon as my guys are dead, I'm leaving, and I did. As soon as they were dead, I just left. I was like, yeah, I'm done. I'm done with the hobby at uni for a bit. You guys are assholes. See you later. Right? Didn't swear. Didn't have a go at them. That was in my head. I wanted them to have a nice day, so I said, no, fuck that shit. I'm off. See you later, and I went. That's the one time I've acted this way. So I can't say I've never acted this way, but winning all the time, and then getting your knickers in a twist because you lose. That is something that happens quite a lot, right? I wouldn't say that's what I did, because, I felt like if I'd lost that game, fair enough. If I'd gotten dropped, a Titan dropped something on me that annihilated all my stuff, fair enough. It's the fact that everybody was systematically just going after the Grey Knights. And I'm like, dude, I've got like half of what all my friends have. And by the way, our side won because the opposition spent so much time attacking me that everybody else was getting away scot-free, clean. So we won by a landslide. You ruined your own game there by just attacking me when I'm in cover with Drago with a 2+ invulnerable save. Brilliant. You know what I mean? For those of you who don't know, if you cast Sanctuary on Drago in 7th edition, you get to 2+ invulnerable save. Makes him very, very, very hard to kill. That and his unit too. If he's with a unit of 10 Terminators or 9 Terminators, they also get a 2+ invulnerable save. It's pretty badass. Anyway, so yeah, it does happen. People aren't used to losing. They can just freak out when it starts happening to them. But not that that's an excuse for this behaviour. It's shitty behaviour. It shouldn't happen. Anyway. So. Oh no, I'm such an asshole. How could I possibly be so selfish? How could I dare win a game once against this guy? Being the bad friend that I am, I didn't concede the game and just instead moved ahead to make the last move that I could. I had a single Terminator from a damaged squad in range of the last grot he had from a damaged squad. All I had to do was charge my Terminator in and squash the little thing. Roger was seething. Like, you can see the heat coming off of him. It was like he was an anime character or something. My only concern, as I declare the charge, was that he might try and flip the table. I slid my Terminator those few inches and rolled my dice. It's that moment I realise I must have in some way sinned against the dice gods because I rolled 1s. I'm stunned. Roger jumps up from his seat, gasping with excitement, and grabs his die. 6. His little nothing, Grot, killed my Terminator and he won the game. Remember, losing wasn't a problem for me, and I would have laughed at this great story of the galaxy's most deadly Grot, but Roger was what you would call a poor sport. He went from being a grumpy sour loser to a gloating asshole in an instant. I would stay friends with him for a few more years until he screwed me over, but I never played 40k with him again. Cheers. Dude, I don't blame you. That must have been not traumatic, because that's a bit of a... Do you know what I mean? That is a bit much. But very frustrating. Very, very frustrating, to say the least. And yeah, well, thank God you're not playing with him anymore. That's all I can say on that one. Lovely models. Moving on. Rylan says, "Hey dude, Rylan here. Let me just start this off by saying I really hope you do a video on this soon. It would make my day. It's a topic I think needs bringing up more and more. Why do Games Workshop stores not allow bloody games anymore?" Okay, so I read the first paragraph of this last night and it did seem very, very interesting, so hopefully it carries on that way. But I will be doing a video on this tomorrow, so just stick around for that. I will be doing a video on that tomorrow. I ask because about a year ago now, me and my painting group went through a pretty shitty experience at my local store, and the taste is still kinda bitter in everybody's mouths. The Games Workshop store around our local area is essentially the mecca for our hobby. It's the focal point around which the local hobby turns. There are no other stores really nearby, and we live in an area that has a city about 20 to 30 minutes drive away. But not everybody can drive, and those that don't will struggle to get a load of models and Crusader case onto a moving train on a weekend. You know how it goes in the UK. Yeah. If you can avoid taking your models on public transport, avoid it. Avoid it. Alright? In the UK. It's just a joke. Having the Games Workshop as the local meeting point meant that we had a place to game, and once a month we would all get in a car together, or 3, and head into the city for a big event at another store or somewhere we had hired. It was a good system, and quite naturally a campaign sort of sprung up based on Dawn of War Dark Crusade, which was kinda big at the time. An idea that came up on this very channel years ago, but I think was actually quite common around the hobby in the 10 or so years after Dark Crusade released. Essentially, you would spawn in on the map, the campaign map, with 500 points of your chosen faction as your army, and would conquer the world map one square or hex at a time. The indigenous armies of the world at this time in our campaign were Imperial Guard, Space Marines and Orcs, as those were the armies the staff in the store played. If you conquered neutral territory to get a bonus for your army, you'd be fighting a staff member for that place, depending on whose territory you were going up against. It was pretty fun, And when you conquered different territories, you got things like an orbital bombardment for your next games, for instance, for taking an orbital targeting array on the map, access to more troops that could bypass the warp storm surrounding the planet to join your army, or even making one of your models mysteriously turn into quite a potent psyker. That happened to my chapter master in the campaign, and it is still something I've kept to this day in terms of homebrewed rules. That's cool, man. I like that. That's really cool. So, the campaign went back and forth for about 8 months. Armies moving across the map into massive last stands to hold on to parts of the territory, or forcing the orcs back, which had most of the map at the start of the campaign, so that more troops could get around the storm and land. We were really engrossed and started making up pieces of lore for the world and the wider star system in which it sat. These maps were placed around the store to show people coming into the hobby just what was possible in Warhammer if you just let your imagination run wild. The amount of people Kyle, our manager, fielded just came into the store and pointed at our maps in the window and said, "Dude, that's really cool. What is that, like Star Wars or something?" To which Kyle would shake his head knowingly with a smile on his face, place his hand around their shoulders, and lead them into the glorious grimdark world that was Warhammer 40,000. It was a complete symbiosis between this campaign and the store. Both grew in people and popularity, and Kyle, thankfully, was seeing a real upswing in the sales department too. Our store was very small, and to see him going from getting a red result every single week, in terms of takings, to getting green results for 8 months straight was a big shot on the arm for us, as well as Kyle. My Emperor's Children got a lot of love in this time, because I played them as loyalists with Rylanor, because of my name, with a Rylanor-like person leading them, which was awesome. Awesome, man. When Kyle moved on to another store, he was moved to a bigger store because he was doing so well at our one, only to leave the company a few months after that. We got a new manager by the name of James. Alright, I'm going to say before we go any further, I think Kyle's gone to that other store that's bigger, right? He's tried to carry on to start a campaign there because it worked in his last store, right? He's been found out and they've sacked him because they don't want him to do that in a big store. That's what I think's happened. Anyway. Or maybe not sacked him, but made his life such a misery that he wants to leave anyway. Now, James was not a typical nightmare of a manager. When I explained the campaign, he was really stoked to carry it on and add to it, which made me super relieved that things were going to carry on just as they were. Well, that's different from a lot of the hobby nightmares we've had. James is pretty cool. I like this. The James as a new manager hasn't... Alright, that's cool. I like it. That is when James left for his first retail workshop. Something he told us was just a training weekend in Nottingham with the rest of the retail family, which is fair enough. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, the retail workshop happens a couple of times a year in the UK. Every manager in the UK goes to a retreat, normally at a hotel in Nottingham. Everything's laid on and paid for, so your meals are paid for, your drinks are paid for, and you do training all day. And you have pints in the night, basically, right? That's what you do. And yeah, it's great. It is amazing until the cliques come along, because if you're... I knew a few managers who were frozen out, essentially, and so I gravitated towards them and brought them with me, and we went and had a few pints. But it wasn't nice for them, because Games Workshop's are very cliquey, and they don't let you in. Do you know what I mean? It's not... They don't get you around the shoulder and say, "Hey man, come and have a pint with us." They don't do that, right? If you see a clique there of managers who know each other or are from the same area, they couldn't give a shit about you, and they don't want to talk to you. They're on their own little table, having their own little drinks. They're okay. You know, I'm alright, Jack. That's their attitude, right? It's not nice. So when you finish... the one training weekend I did, I went with my laptop and I played fucking Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 in my room. For like the first... I think it's like the second night. I was like, yeah, I've had enough. I've had enough of this. So I've gone downstairs and nobody talking to us. Because my friends who were there got sick of it and just went home because they were in the local area. They were managing stores nearby. I wasn't. My store was miles away. So I had to be like, okay, well, I guess I'll just stay in the hotel then until this is finished. You know, just shit. But there were other times where I was adopted by the Scotland crew. They were really nice to me and things like that. But in terms of cliquiness, it's probably one of the worst places I've ever worked. And I've worked in a lot of nerdy places. Games Workshop was the worst in terms of cliques. Wasn't nice at all. When he came back on the Wednesday the store was open for the first time, he was essentially the same James I had met a few times before this, but he had clearly been given clear instructions. All of our maps were taken down, our custom terrain was gone, all traces of our hard work erased. James, to his credit, looked completely crestfallen, not out of shock because he knew it was coming, but out of cringe. I headed in there to pick up some intercessors and asked him what the hell was up. He told me all that weekend he had been told by so many people to stop the campaign when he stupidly brought it up. Yeah, that was his mistake. Alright? That was his mistake. Don't ever mention it. I knew a lot of managers who did stuff that Games Workshop HQ wouldn't have liked. They just didn't mention it. Kept it to themselves. We're talking tournaments, we're talking Blood Bowl leagues, we're talking all these different things that pulled customers in and got them spending that Games Workshop don't like. They would do it just ad hoc and just cover it up and say it doesn't happen in the store. Anyway, they were on him the entire time, the entire training event, and he had no idea what to do, really. Eventually, when he was hesitant to just getting rid of all the stuff, head office offered, quote-unquote, more like told, quote-unquote, James some guys to head down and remove it all for him on his days off. He was positioned in a way that he just had to say yes, or risk losing his job or being ostracised there and then. That's how bad the atmosphere was around him having a campaign going on in his store. He ended up keeping his job and getting rid of the campaign. Two blokes from head office, trainers by the sound of things, headed down on the Sunday, unlocked the store in the evening, and nuked everything that night and Monday morning when the store was closed. Look, I'm really sorry, James said. I hope you understand. I nodded, because I did understand, and I said, yeah, it's no worries, man. Just as long as you understand that this will be my last purchase in this store. I need to be somewhere where I can play games, and obviously, as much as you're a nice guy, this ain't it. Unquote. That sucks, man. It's always more, shall we say, satisfying when the manager you're leaving behind is a dickhead. Do you know what I mean? But when he's a nice guy like this, and it's not his, you know, it's not really what he wants from the store either. I mean, yeah, it sucks, man. That sucks. We got into a discussion on why the decision has been made. James told me he had been told gaming strangles the store as nobody buys models, even though we do, and we did. And that even when James made that case, showing trainers the printouts of the store in the green only after the campaign started week on week, it still didn't help. Yeah, they don't want to know, man. They don't want to know. They don't want gaming in stores. Even if you bring them evidence that the sky is blue and gaming makes money in stores, they don't want gaming in stores. It's a culture thing. It's not a money thing. It's got nothing to do with money. Right? Money is not an argument they will respect. It's a culture thing. They don't want nerds in their stores. They want their Games Workshop stores to resemble Apple stores, where you go in, you can buy the product there if you want, but that's all you can do. And you go and play it and use it on your own time, right? That's what they want. They had basically backed him into a corner until he allowed them to come down and remove all the stuff, but he didn't drink the Kool-Aid. The issue here was for James, you can't be half in and half out. Completely correct. Completely correct, yeah. Eventually, they will sniff you out as not being totally on board with the Games Workshop rhetoric of no games in stores. And they did sniff him out. He was gone 6 months later, but gaming never returned to the store. Ah, that's fucking horrible. We tried to keep the campaign going, but it left such a bad taste in people's mouths that we all just couldn't start again with the campaign materials and other things. I mean that in and of itself was rage-inducing. Games Workshop told James he could not return any of the campaign materials to us as they were made using company property and were on company property, so that was it. Games Workshop's property, and so Games Workshop threw their own property in the dumpster, because it was theirs to do with as they will. There were a few bits of terrain there that we had bought for the campaign to help Kyle out in the past, that was lumped in with the stuff thrown out too. It was that convoluted an ownership issue, though, that we just let it go and went to play elsewhere. The campaign eventually died out, and the gaming space locally kind of went with it. We had nowhere else to play outside of the city, which was a good 30-minute drive away, as I said. We still went down there once a month, to the city I mean, and I guess we are lucky to get even that. I just want to say this to your listeners. If you have a place to play regularly, and good people to play with, then you need to realise just how lucky you are. Seriously. It's only now I'm on the other side of this, that I can see that not having a lot of people to play with is kind of the norm and not the exception, and that's bloody tragic if you ask me. Thanks, North, for all you do. Rylon, mate, I could not have put that any better myself towards the end there. I literally could not have put that any better myself. I've got hardly anybody to play. I run a mildly successful YouTube channel. Mildly successful, right? And I've got no opponents. I live near a city, and I've got no opponents. So if I'm in that situation, I'm an outgoing guy. I ask for opponents, they're not here, right? If I'm in that situation, where are you? If you're in a rural area, or if you're outside of a city and you don't have the same reach that I do, where are you going to get your games? You know, not having a lot of people to play is the norm. And the fact that Games Workshop are going away from having games in store just means there's one less place for us to meet up and roll some dice and enjoy our hobby. That's the one reason why it should stay. Alright? I don't give a shit about making money in stores, because Games Workshop don't give a shit about it. They don't care. Alright? They don't give a shit. They make most of their money on online sales. Alright? Who is really going into a Games Workshop store to buy shit? Of your, there'll be a few of you out there who get everything from Games Workshop, of course. But of your entire collection, look at it now, if it's next to you. Alright? Or have a little think to yourself. How much of that did you buy by walking into a Games Workshop brick and mortar retailer and buying it? I'm going to say not a lot. Most of it will be online, Element Games, things like that, do you know what I mean? They're making money hand over fist, but long ago, retail was surpassed by other things, alright? The money-making, spinning part of Games Workshop is no longer their retail stores. Their retail stores, for the most part, make a fucking loss. They don't care about the money. So I don't want to hear one of those fucking arguments that, well, they do strangle sales in stores. Right? Gaming only strangles your store when you're doing it wrong. Like I did. Right? Gaming only strangles your store when you do it wrong. When you do it right, when you marry it into the campaign you're doing, when you marry it into sales, you're making money hand over fist, dude. Hand over fist. Alright? If you're in a busy store, you are making bank by doing that. Absolute bank. Okay? Turning your store into a fucking youth club because you can't be arsed is not the way to do it, and that's what I did. That's a bad way to do it, right? So there is a bad way to do it. And yes, gaming will strangle your store if you do that. If you do it properly, gaming is going to be the central pillar of your store selling and being in the green every single week. And it doesn't need to be. They don't give a shit. I've known managers to be in the red at Games Workshop for years. Years. And they keep their jobs. Why? Because they don't get any complaints. And they're still getting some sales. Alright? All you're there to do is to spread the hobby as Games Workshop store. That's all you're there to do. But that's all you're there to do. Games Workshop, stop telling your people there that they've got to make certain sales targets if you don't care about it yourself. That's nasty. Don't do that. Alright? And number two, if you want it to be an experience of selling the models and also, you know, being a boutique store where you can get introduced to the hobby, there's no better way of introducing somebody to the hobby than having them watch the games going on in the store. Cultivate a good set of people in your store. I'll talk about this tomorrow, but it's something I feel very, very, very passionate about. Alright? Games Workshop should do games in store. Alright? I'll put that on the record right now. Anyway, I love you all a long time. I'll speak to you tomorrow. Have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you then. Have a good one. Bye now.